Please welcome a man who would have my vote in 2020. I'm just saying, Michael Bloomberg.
Thank you.
Michael, Mayor, Mr. Mayor. I'll call you Mr. Mayor. Yes, you always keep those titles, don't you guys? You spent over $100 million helping Democrats in the midterms, and 21 out of 24 people that you backed
And I think 15
won.
were women.
Yep.
And all of them care very much about
18
climate change.
were women.
18 women?
18 were women, and the blue wave, yeah.
Care about climate change and want background checks for guns. Not to eliminate guns, but background checks. Those are the two things.
So you got everything you were hoping for. Okay. So what are you hoping that all that money gets you in January when they take over? What's going to happen then?
Good government. I mean, I've said this a number of times. The Republicans did not exercise the check and balance on the White House that the Constitution calls for, and they were unwilling to take on any of the controversial issues, any of the major things facing this country. They did absolutely nothing. Time for a change. In business, you'd fire somebody if they did a terrible job. We just fired a bunch of them.
Why do you think the GOP was so, reticent or whatever you want to...
They became a party rather than of an ideology, of a personality. And now I think they're going to pay for it because when Mr. Trump is not popular, it hurts them at the ballot box, and they're going to really suffer.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've been very critical of President Trump, and you've been openly weighing a run against him in 2020. Pretty open. And you flirted with running the last time. Do you regret that you didn't run the last time?
No, I think we found is you cannot win as an independent because the Electoral College requires a majority, not a plurality. And even if I did get a lot of electoral votes, you couldn't possibly win. It would have gone to the House, and the House would then pick the Republican candidate, or if it was next time, pick the Democratic candidate.
Yeah.
And you have to have the...
You become a spoiler in a way when that happens.
That's exactly what my obit would have been. He was the spoiler. And this way they can write other things about me when I die.
Okay.
What would make it more appealing to you then for 2020?
Well, you'd only run if you could get the Republican or the Democratic nomination. Obviously, the Republican's probably not going to be available, and I don't agree with almost everything they stand for today. So it'd have to be the Democratic nomination. And if you want to run, that's what you'd have to do. And I don't know. I've looked at it, and I've said we'll, beginning of the year, focus on it.
So where does that... Wait, I just want to make sure. You'd be running as a Democrat, correct? Not primarying President Trump.
No, you'd have to run as a Democrat. And before I forget, I just want to say, your father was one of my heroes.
I feel it's a little strange interviewing you. We've been longtime family friends.
Well, I was going to say, and I knew you when you were this tall.
I know. You're a true friend to my family.
Your mother
Weren't you a pallbearer at the...
Yes.
Yeah.
He's there.
I was a pallbearer at the funeral.
Pallbearer, and her father campaigned for me on the streets of Brooklyn back in 2009.
One of the most memorable moments of my childhood is going to Italian dinner with you and my dad downtown someplace, and just your wonderful girlfriend. And yes, it's weird to be interviewing you because I know you very well, sir, but I'm fascinated that you will be running possibly for president.
We'll see what happens.
Where do you fit in the Democratic Party? Because obviously you won as a Republican, as an independent, but the excitement right now seems to be behind the more extreme wing of the Democratic Party, Bernie Sanders, Ocasio-Cortez. You would actually probably be more with Trump on things like China and maybe some business dealings, I would imagine.
I think, for example, on China, it is asymmetrical. It's not fair to us. We should do something about it.
So you agree with him there?
With what he's trying to do, but not the way. You don't do it by going and pushing the other person into a situation where they can't possibly give you what you need. Negotiations don't work that way. You want to walk away where both sides think they got something, and we should push China. I'm the first one to advocate for doing it, but it's the style that you do it.
What happened to the art of the deal? I thought that's his whole thing.
Well, that's the name of the book.
A bit of diplomacy.
So you think, though, you could get through the Democratic primary as it exists today?
Well,
where the excitement
that's exactly what you have to try to figure out. I think most Democrats want a middle-of-the-road strategy. They want to make progress, but they're not willing to go and to push something that has no chance of ever getting done and wasting all their energy on that. We have things that we need done. We have to create jobs for people today. We have to find ways to give medical care for people today. We have to fix our education system, immigration, climate change, guns. There's no lack of issues you have to face. And if you go off on trying to push for something that has no chance of getting done, that we couldn't possibly pay for, that just takes away from where you can really make progress in helping people that need help today.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. You've made a lot of calls for bipartisanship, but you're a leading voice in the anti-gun movement, which puts you immediately at odds with a lot of Republicans. You spent a lot of money, but Congress hasn't taken up any major gun control measures at a national level since Sandy Hook. So do you feel like your efforts have been effective?
What I have asked for, and most of my friends who have asked for, are background checks. We shouldn't be selling guns to minors, to people with psychiatric problems, or people with criminal records. Other than that, the Second Amendment gives you the right to own weapons, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's the Constitution. We're not going to change it. I think maybe automatic weapons don't make a lot of sense, but if you want to buy a gun and go through the background check process, that's what the law lets you do. And I'm not opposed, I'm not in favor of taking that away one bit. In fact, I had an NRA member came up to me yesterday and said, look, I disagree with you on guns, but let me tell you, I and all my friends are going to vote for you. I still think that there is reasonable restrictions you can put on it, who you sell guns to, and that's what I'm in favor of.
It disheartens you that there hasn't been any legislation passed since Sandy Hook?
No, but there's been a lot at the state level. There are 18 states that have put in background check requirements, not taking away your guns. Just before you buy one, you have to go through the background check process. The 19th state is Nevada.
Massage. Thousands of students have graduated our programs, qualified for a new career in the growing healthcare field.
Our faculty and staff have a real passion to prepare our students and see them succeed.
And at the Dayton School of Medical Massage, our career placement services continue well after graduation.
Now I have a career I love.
You can too. Train to become a licensed massage therapist. At Dayton School of Medical Massage, financial aid is available to those who qualify. Call today.
We're back with Michael Bloomberg. So, Mayor, the documentary that you just produced, Paris to Pittsburgh, shows some of the ways the current administration has rolled back progress in the area of climate change. So I always ask the same question. Don't politicians who are deniers or who roll back things, don't they have to breathe the same air that you and I have to breathe?
Absolutely do. And it went from Paris to Pittsburgh when he said he was there to protect people from Pittsburgh, and the mayor of Pittsburgh stood up and said, we breathe the same air that they breathe in Paris. Yeah. And that's where the name of the movie came from. And how they can walk away from something. You go to Iowa, a third of all their energy comes from windmills. Talk to the farmers. They see it every day. There are droughts. There are floods. Crops grow differently. And in fact, we interviewed some people who were training to be engineers and fix all the windmills. And it's a great job for young kids out of school. And because everybody's going to need them for an awful long time. They can travel around the world. It's everything.
Do you think we're too far gone now to fix the climate change?
I hope not.
Do you think we should do nuclear power like much of Europe?
I've never objected to nuclear power. It hasn't killed anybody, but it's so controversial, you're not going to have it here. It is carbon neutral. It has shown to be reasonably safe, but it would take forever to get it in. So it's just a non-starter, and it's not worth it.
Do you think President Trump actually... Do you think he believes in what he says when Sarah Sanders says this is not based on fact when it's a report from the own administration? Or do you think they're trying to just appease what they think the base wants to?
It is really hard when you look outside or when you watch television, you see the forest fires and the floods and 3 feet of rain in South Carolina. How can you not believe that something isn't changing? How can you not listen to all the great scientists in the world, or virtually all of them? So I don't know. I can't speak for what Donald Trump says or why. You got to ask him.
Money.
Well, the film also looks at Casa Pueblo in Puerto Rico.
Right.
It's just amazing. It runs largely on renewable energy and was one of the only places that was operable after Hurricane Maria. And as Puerto Rico rebuilds, what opportunities do you think exist to prevent this kind of massive power failure that we saw from happening again? I mean, it was one of the only places when I was there people were saying that they could charge their phones.
You have to build to a higher standard. You have to understand there are going to be big storms. So you don't just put up a wooden pole that can come down in the wind. You put up a cement pole with steel to hold it up. You know you're going to have more hurricanes. You know you're going to have more big winds. So build for it. Build your houses a lot stronger. People say that's a great idea, but not my house.
Right. And in terms of renewable energy, I mean, solar panels, that kind of thing.
If they, after seeing that, don't urge everybody in the world to stop polluting, I don't know what would get you to stop polluting.
Okay, I just want to say before we go that Michael Bloomberg also gave $1.8 billion to Johns Hopkins University so that no young, poor people have to pay for their education. Incredible. Thanks to Michael Bloomberg. His new documentary, Paris to Pittsburgh, airs Wednesday night.
I've experienced.
Next, Steve. Today at 4 on ABC 22.
Meet Nathan Edwards. He was born and raised right here in the Miami Valley.
Go Aviators! Nathan and his wife are raising their child in his family home in Dayton.
He's the guy that brings a smile to your face while delivering the news you need.
We're ABC 22 News in the morning.
Here, CMA Country Christmas.
With performances that'll have you rocking all night long.
Baby, let it snow.
Reba McEntire hosts CMA Country Christmas. Tonight, 8/7 Central on ABC.
Tomorrow, Ken Jeong on how he's handling being on board the wildest, star-studded new game show, The Masked Singer. And stumped about what kids want this holiday? We are unveiling this season's hottest toys they want under the tree this year.
The man behind Oscar and Emmy-winning works like The Social Network and The West Wing has adapted an American classic for the Broadway stage that's as relevant today as it was when it was first written. Harper Lee's historic novel To Kill a Mockingbird. Please welcome Aaron Sorkin. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
It's a very, I love the play. I just told you that at the break. I went to see it, and it's phenomenal. But it's a very interesting time now in this country. We were just talking to Michael Bloomberg about it, and you've written a few political dramas in your day. What's your take on everything that's going on in the White House? I mean, is this giving you even more material to work with?
Well, you know, there's what's going on in the White House, and then there's what's going on with all of us in the country. And one of the things that happens in the play is that Atticus sort of wakes up to the fact that he didn't really know who his friends and neighbors were. And I think that a lot of us, anywhere on the ideological spectrum, have felt the same way for the last 2 years, that we kind of woke up saying, I had no idea that they, whoever they is for you, felt that way.
Yeah, that's so true. Sometimes to calm myself, I will pull up old episodes of The West Wing. I love that show so much. You can really watch it at any time.
Thanks. Well, it was, you know, The West Wing, again, no matter where you are on the ideological spectrum, it was about a group of hyper-competent people who were dedicated to public service, and they were going to slip on banana peels a lot, and they were going to lose as much as they won, but you knew for sure that when they got up in the morning, they cared about you.
Is there going to be
Netflix right now, I believe.
Netflix?
It is. I didn't want to do a plug, but yes, it is.
Well, you can tell us this. Is there going to be a reboot? I think people have been aching for that. Sterling K. Brown, who's awesome, it was rumors that he'd be happy to do it.
And God knows we'd be happy to have him. You know, the cast and I, we have dinner once every 3 months or so. It's something we'd love to do, but we're also very protective of the memory of the show. And so I don't want it to be a kind of Brady Bunch reunion. So if I can get a good idea, which is something that doesn't happen very often, then I'll do it. But otherwise, it'll just have to stay on.
It's not a no.
It's not. I'm not slamming the door on it.
Yeah. You know, one hot topic that constantly comes up is Facebook. And Facebook has been under fire recently for selling off political data, lobbying against George Soros, covering up Russian election meddling, among all the other scandals. You obviously wrote an entire movie about how the CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, got in over his head when he originally created Facebook from his college dorm room. Did you see all this coming?
I don't think anybody could have seen that coming. Now, first of all, I have to tell you, I know more about Facebook in 2005 than I know about it in 2018. But I read the paper like anybody else. And, you know, Mark, talk about being in over his head. It just seems like the water keeps climbing no matter how far his nose gets to the surface. But there's definitely an interesting movie in what you just described.
So let's talk about To Kill a Mockingbird. You call this project a suicide mission for yourself. Why do you say that?
Well, To Kill a Mockingbird is one of the most beloved novels in American literature. In fact, last month, PBS viewers voted it the most beloved novel. What could I do but make it less than what it was? So knowing that on any given night, most people in the audience will either have read the book or seen the movie or both. I was nervous going into it, but then at some point you just have to make the decision. I'm not going to swaddle the book in bubble wrap and gently transfer it to a stage. That's not what theater is for. So this play is not an homage. It's not an exercise in nostalgia. It's not a trip to the museum. This is a new play that takes a new look at To Kill a Mockingbird because, and nor did I pretend that I was writing it in 1960 when Harper Lee wrote it. I was writing it today.
How would she feel about it, do you think? About what you did?
I've asked that question before, and I've been asked that question before, rather. And the last thing she did before she passed away was approve me as the playwright who was going to do it. So,
great.
So that's nice. That said, listen, you mentioned The West Wing. I wrote the first 4 seasons of The West Wing before I had to leave the show. The first time I saw an episode of The West Wing not written by me, I needed CPR. So I imagine that a stranger making new words come out of the mouths of her beloved characters would not thrill her, but what I hope is that she would understand that the playwright had a deep love and respect for her novel. But the thing is, things have changed in 58 years. It's time to take a new look at Atticus. When you know, most of us, we were taught the book in middle school, and we were taught that Atticus's tolerance, his idea that there's goodness can be found in everyone, and all you have to do is crawl around in someone else's skin, and you'll get to know them, that was a virtue. And in the book, in the movie, Atticus has the answers. In the play, he struggles with these questions. Is being tolerant of intolerance a virtue?
I thought that the play really stayed true to the spirit of the book. And in fact, this book was mandatory reading for me when I first went to law school. It was on our reading list at Notre Dame. And what's striking when you're watching the play is how relevant the story feels in 2018, because you've got a small-town lawyer in the Deep South defending an innocent black man against a white woman's rape allegation. Right. And you say you were influenced by Charlottesville.
Yeah, here's how. In going back and looking at the book again, and realizing that that Atticus insists on others being understood, that you have to understand Bob Ewell, who was a member of the Klan, as a guy who he just lost his job, so that's going to make him feel small. You have to understand Mrs. DuBose, who's just a horrible racist, as a woman who she recently stopped taking her medication. That's why she's like that. You have to understand the 12 jurors who sit in judgment over Tom Robinson as who they are. Started to sound an awful lot to me like there were fine people on both sides. Now, in the case of Atticus Finch, that is coming from a good place. He means well. He's wrong, but he means well. In the case of the person who actually said it, I can't say the same thing. But the play takes a harder look at whether or not Atticus is right.
Over getting holiday shopping done, we're making it a lot easier for you. We've partnered with vendors for at least half off some of this season's best gift ideas while supplies last. So let's get shopping with Lifestyle Expert.
I got your can't go wrong gifts right here, girl. Don't you worry. First one up, hoodoos. Check these Sherpa socks out. They're
Sherpa all the way down, cozy, comfortable. Give the gift to cozy. Who doesn't love that? It's a no-brainer gift.
Oh,
also,
they feel
headbands
good.
and mittens go online. Tons for men and women. Easy to gift. Gift yourself or anyone else. Original price on these, Sunny, $25 to $30. Today deal, you're not going to believe it, $12.50 to $15.
That.
Next one I love for you is Kay Carroll. Check this out. I know I dipped that. Kay Carroll. This is the most modern tote, you guys, because it's a carry-all, but it's smart. It has 8 pockets, 4 exterior, 4 interior, and the interior ones have RFID lining. That's the security lining for our cards, so that we keep our personal information safe.
Oh, that's
all
good.
All of these colors are all year round, and so is the fabric. So it's a smart gift to give if you want to give a great accessory. Phones on the outside, keys, credit cards on the inside. Isn't that easy to get in and out of?
Good.
Oh, an extra wide strap so that it's comfy. Original price on these, $60. Can't believe it, $25.
Wow.
Savings of more than half off. I'm dying to show you these. Now, you are going to...
Proof he did nothing wrong. Will the next presidential election be a battle of the billionaires? For the first time on daytime TV, the man who turned the tide in the midterm elections, Michael Bloomberg, is talking about whether he'll take on Trump in 2020. Plus, Oscar and Emmy winner Aaron Sorkin on updating an American classic about a problem that's still plaguing our country today. And it's one-stop holiday shopping on View Your Deal. Hot topics are on the table with Whoopi, Abby Huntsman, Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, and Meghan McCain. Now, let's get things started.
Madame Whoopi will be back tomorrow. But right now, let's talk about what's going on in the world. I have to admit, I'm not convinced that Trump is guilty of committing a crime, but it sure seems like individual one is. Because he is individual one, get it? Among the latest filings from New York federal prosecutors is that Michael Cohen claims that individual one directed him to use campaign money to pay off Stormy Daniels and playmate Karen McDougal, which happens to be a federal crime.
Yeah.
But he calls it, Trump already has said, this is not a crime. This was a private transaction. Then why would you get 4 years for a private transaction? That's what Michael Cohen is going to get.
I think it's significant in the sense that now you have the federal government, federal prosecutors saying that this president basically directed another person to commit a crime.
Right.
Because it's a felony to cause another person to make an illegal contribution. And I think that's one of the most significant things that has happened. But what most people are looking at is that Southern District filing. They're not looking at what the Mueller filing says. And the Mueller filing says that Michael Cohen really cooperated with the Mueller investigation. And in fact, he's been helpful on 4 main topics, Mueller writes. The Trump Organization's attempt to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. Apparently, Cohen gave a lot of information about that.
Yeah, but let me interrupt you. Trump said he just was working that out in case he lost.
Yeah, well...
So how do you answer that?
Well, that's...
He said that. I'm just taking his position.
Well, I don't know that we know the entire scope of what Mueller has, but we know that Michael Cohen cooperated with him extensively.
Right.
Talked about Russia, talked about the Trump business, talked about the Trump White House, talked about the campaign, and Mueller calls it useful. When a prosecutor says that was useful, you better believe it was useful.
Yeah.
And so it was useful to his investigation, and I think that really is what people aren't talking about, but probably should be.
You know, all this talk about Russian collusion, though, for the past 2 years, all the money that's been spent, the millions of dollars, there's still nothing that we know of as of right now on Russian collusion.
That's because Mueller has kept it very close to the vest.
Well, but we also, and he's actually the winner in all this so far has been Mueller, because he has been so quiet, and I think every journalist out there is dying to get anything from him. But the thing I've been concerned about from the beginning has been campaign finance violations.
Yeah.
Paying off his woman, which is what...
With Michael Cohen.
But what's interesting, and you mentioned this in the morning meeting, Joy, is that if he runs again and he wins, because of the statute of limitations, 5 years, it could be that he gets out scot-free. If there is a problem here and he can get indicted.
Well, you're talking about that there's a policy in the Department of
campaign
Justice that you can't
finance
indict a
violations?
sitting president.
Wait, what? Sorry. What's your question?
She's referring to the fact that the Justice Department has a policy that you don't indict a sitting president. But I just want to mention...
It's not in the Constitution.
It's not in the Constitution, and the Supreme Court has never looked at that question. So in my view, that is still up in the air. Everybody's saying, well, he can't be indicted as a sitting president. I say take it to the Supreme Court. Oh, just saying.
I mean,
just saying.
I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but I do know that in 2008, Barack Obama's presidential campaign was guilty of violating nearly $2 million in campaign violations. The matter was quietly settled with a $375,000 fine of the Federal Election Commission. Guilty of violating or involving early $2 million. Rand Paul was on Meet the Press yesterday, and he said, quote, if we're going to prosecute people and put them in jail for campaign finance violations, we've become a banana republic where every president gets prosecuted and everybody gets thrown in jail when they're done with the office. Now, there's many campaigns that
you
don't,
make the case.
But I'm just saying President Obama did it as well. And I will say that in our entire history, there have been 2 presidents impeached, obviously Bill Clinton, and then Andrew Johnson in 1868 after the Civil War.
I dated him,
Didn't work out.
Touche. And I'm just saying that it takes, I think we come in the morning, and I'm sure people watching at home, when you turn on the news, I know that I'm getting this hysteria alarm every single morning, and I'm trying to delineate between what's fact and what's not fact as someone who isn't a lawyer.
Right.
Is there enough there? Does it seem like there's enough smoke there that there's potentially going to be something there? Yes, of course. Do I believe we're on the path to impeachment? Absolutely not.
I disagree with that, especially because I've been watching the Clinton affair on A&E. Clinton was
good. If you've not
real
seen
juicy.
that.
And Clinton was impeached for having an affair with Monica
No, for
Lewinsky.
lying.
No, for perjury.
But it was really for...
Hot topics are on the table with Rookie, Abby Huntsman, Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, and Meghan McCain. Now, let's get things started.
Madame Whoopi will be back tomorrow. But right now, let's talk about what's going on in the world. I have to admit, I'm not convinced that Trump is guilty of committing a crime, but it sure seems like individual one is. Because he is individual one, get it? Among the latest filings from New York federal prosecutors is that Michael Cohen claims that individual one directed him to use campaign money to pay off Stormy Daniels and playmate Karen McDougal, which happens to be a federal crime.
Yeah.
But he calls it, Trump already has said, this is not a crime. This was a private transaction. Then why would you get 4 years for a private transaction? That's what Michael Cohen is going to get.
I think it's significant in the sense that now you have the federal government, federal prosecutors saying that this president basically directed another person to commit a crime.
Right.
Because it's a felony to cause another person to make an illegal contribution. And I think that's one of the most significant things that has happened. But what most people are looking at is that Southern District filing. They're not looking at what the Mueller filing says. And the Mueller filing says that Michael Cohen really cooperated with the Mueller investigation. And in fact, he's been helpful on 4 main topics, Mueller writes. The Trump Organization's attempt to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. Apparently, Cohen gave a lot of information about that.
Yeah, but let me interrupt you, because Trump said he just was working that out in case he lost.
Yeah, well...
So how do you answer that?
Well, that's...
He said that. I'm just taking his position for a second.
I don't know that we know the entire scope of what Mueller has, but we know that Michael Cohen cooperated with him extensively.
Right.
Talked about Russia, talked about the Trump business, talked about the Trump White House, talked about the campaign, and Mueller calls it useful. when a prosecutor says that was useful, you better believe it was useful.
Yeah.
And so it was useful to his investigation, and I think that really is what people aren't talking about, but probably should be.
You know, all this talk about Russian collusion, though, for the past 2 years, all the money that's been spent, the millions of dollars, there's still nothing that we know of as of right now on Russian collusion.
That's because Mueller has kept it very close to the vest.
Well, but we also, and he's actually the winner in all this so far has been Mueller, because he has been so quiet, and I think every journalist out there is dying to get anything from him. But the thing I've been concerned about from the beginning has been campaign finance violations. Paying off which is what
Michael Cohen
what's interesting, and you mentioned this in the morning meeting, Joy, is that if he runs again and he wins, because of the statute of limitations, 5 years, it could be that he gets out scot-free. If there is a problem here and he can get indicted.
Well, you're talking about there's a policy in this Department
campaign finance violations?
Sitting president.
Wait, what? Sorry. What's your question?
She's referring to the fact that the Justice Department has a policy that you don't indict a sitting president. But I just want to mention...
It's not in the Constitution.
It's not in the Constitution, and the Supreme Court has never looked at that question. So in my view, that is still up in the air. Everybody's saying, well, he can't be indicted as a sitting president. I say take it to the Supreme Court. Oh, just saying.
I mean,
just saying.
I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but I do know that in 2008, Barack Obama's presidential campaign was guilty of violating nearly $2 million in campaign violations. The matter was quietly settled with a $375,000 fine of the Federal Election Commission. Guilty of violating or involving early $2 million. Rand Paul was on Meet the Press yesterday, and he said, quote, if we're going to prosecute people and put them in jail for campaign finance violations, we've become a banana republic where every president gets prosecuted and everybody gets thrown in jail when they're done with the office. Now, there's many campaigns that
you
don't,
make the case.
But I'm just saying President Obama did it as well. And I will say that in our entire history, there have been 2 presidents impeached, obviously Bill Clinton, and then Andrew Johnson in 1868 after the Civil War.
I dated him,
Didn't work out. Touche. And I'm just saying that it takes, I think we come in the morning, and I'm sure people watching at home when we turn on the news, I know that I'm getting this hysteria alarm every single morning, and I'm trying to delineate between what's fact and what's not fact as someone who isn't a lawyer.
Right.
Is there enough there? Does it seem like there's enough smoke there that there's potentially going to be something there? Yes, of course. Do I believe we're on the path to impeachment? Absolutely not.
I disagree with that, especially because I've been watching the Clinton affair on A&E. Clinton was...
it's good if you've not
real
seen
juicy.
that.
And Clinton was impeached for having an affair with Monica Lewinsky.
For lying.
No, for perjury.
But it was really for having an affair with Monica Lewinsky and lying about it. And lying about it.
Yeah.
But
I think that rises if that rises to high crimes and misdemeanors, then you best believe that what Trump has done in terms of directing Michael Cohen to commit a federal crime better rise to the level. I don't know what Rand Paul is saying.
I want to quote Steve Bannon before we go. Can I quote Steve Bannon? Yeah. He says the president needs a team that can go to the mattresses. Don't you love a mafia? It's a mob. That's a mob phrase.
Did he just say that?
He wrote this. The president can't trust the GOP to be there when it comes. They don't feel any sense of duty or responsibility to stand with Trump. That's his biggest problem, that the GOP is not going to back him as soon as more of this stuff comes out.
Yeah.
And that's why he's like a trapped rat in the White House.
71% of Republicans think the Mueller investigation is a, quote, witch hunt, according to the NPR PBS NewsHour poll that came out last week. And right now, actually, for the first time, more Americans say they view Mueller more negatively than positively. At any other time, 29% favorably, 33% unfavorably, and I think this is a 7-point decline from the summer. I think part of this is Fisher Cup bait, man. Show me your
But you know what I don't understand? Only 27% of Americans are Republicans. Why do the 27% of Americans that are Republicans control what everybody else is thinking? I think that the other 73% of Americans, they care about that.
Okay, all of that will be all.
Mueller investment.
We'll be right out.
7%.
Ready, ladies? What you doing, boo-boo?
Making a necklace for Mom.
Okay, you want to wrap it up?
Still ahead, a View exclusive. Michael Bloomberg on betting over $100 million on the midterms, if he'll challenge Trump in 2020, and starting a revolution from Paris to Pittsburgh. Plus, Oscar and Emmy winner Aaron Sorkin. And view your deal for the holidays.
So last week, Kevin Hart stepped down, apologized as Oscar host after some of his old anti-gay tweets emerged. You remember all that? Yes. Okay, but this weekend, his friend Nick Cannon asked he goes, interesting in these tweets he was doing. I wonder if there was any backlash here. And then he reposted tweets from comedians Sarah Silverman and Amy Schumer and Chelsea Handler, where they all used anti-gay slurs. So did he just open a Pandora's box here? And what is going to happen now? I mean, no comedian is safe.
Well, those women also weren't asked to host the Oscars.
Exactly.
I guarantee if they were asked, then people would have dug through their social media. One of the themes of this year, other than the Me Too movement, has been how quick we are to tear the people down. We look at their past, we judge them, we don't let them learn from their mistakes, and we don't forgive them. And I feel like if I know anything about the gay community, and everyone at this table has close friends that are gay, they're about the most forgiving people in this world. And so I think we've got to get over this, being so quick to judge people, finding failure on every single person's part, and just moving on and bettering each other, bettering society.
First off, can I just say, just take the side of these three girls for a second. From what I know of their work, they are pro-gay comedians. They are not people. The Kevin Hart thing was very nasty, I thought. When he said, rape the doll's head and hit him on the head. I didn't like that at all. It upset me. But these girls, they don't, I shouldn't call them girls. We're not girls. We're men. No, kidding. Kidding. You know, these girls are comedians, and they love the gay community. The gay community loves them. They're icons of the gay community.
But they still,
so I don't see how
it's about intent. Is that
yeah, it's about
the intent, right?
What we were saying in the meeting, and I wish they had given us more time to talk about this, because this is actually one of the nucleuses where you and I have a lot of synergy. Yeah. Free speech is, I think, one of the tenets of being an American. I think it's extremely important. That doesn't mean that you can throw out slurs at people and not have ramifications in your work in one way or the other. But I don't want to live in a culture and a society where I think comedians and pundits in particular push boundaries for a reason. I don't agree with anything Bill Maher says, hardly ever. I watch his show almost every week because I think he's pushing boundaries. And I'm always going to be interested in people who are going to say the things that other people are scared to say. And that doesn't mean it's okay to, you know, have any kind of violence or hate speech or anything under that terminology. But according to the Federalist, which in all candidness my husband runs, there's now the people who couldn't host the Oscars now include Tiffany Haddish, Donald Glover, Sarah Silverman, Jon Stewart, Tina Fey, Dave Chappelle, and Stephen Colbert, according to things that they've said in the past. So that's now the Kevin Hart rule. I just don't know who's going to be hosting a
Maybe they can find the 4-year-old.
Because a little kid, probably a mime or a juggler.
Or a mime or a juggler.
I love that song, y'all.
A queen, a leading man.
I have to tell you something funny about our wedding.
A visionary rebel, a superhero mastermind.
When I was 7, I drew a picture of Manly Stanley.
A true American.